Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Daffy's Roundtable. Today, we're joined by another guest all the way from Australia. So, of course, we had to discuss herping in Australia. We also talk all about Gillen's monitors and what breeding them is like, and we briefly touch on some of the other species that this keeper is keeping. Things like Egernia, Shinglebacks, and Boyd's Forest Dragons. If you haven't already guessed it, I'm talking about Luke from BeachesScalyBeasts. We're also joined once again by Greg from Beneath the Canopy Exotics as my co-host for this episode. But before we get into all of that, allow me to thank Exo Terra for sponsoring this podcast and making this episode possible. Exo Terra makes quality products for our pet reptiles to make them feel at home. All right, without further ado, everybody please help me welcome Luke from Beach's Scaly Beasts. Luke, hello.
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. Thank you for joining us very, very early.
No, that's okay. Yeah, sorry I'm a bit late.
No, not at all. It's Friday evening for us. We're just hanging out doing reptile stuff anyway, so it doesn't matter. Where do you want to start this out? Do you want to start this out at Australia, or do you want to start this out at how you got into reptiles?
Well, let's figure out how you got into it all.
Okay, how did you get into reptiles? How long you been keeping? Sort of give us the rundown.
So, probably got into reptiles like most kids in Australia. You know, we've got a lot of stuff crawling around the backyards here, so you know you can kind of pick up interest pretty easily just by seeing what's kind of available in the backyard, and you know, chasing around blue tongues and leaf-tailed geckos and things like that. Probably a bit of a catalyst for me was my parents bought a property that kind of backed onto a little bit of sandstone in Sydney, so we were getting quite a few snakes and lizards and stuff like that kind of coming through, and yeah, you know, being a kid and not really thinking too much about it, I was catching them in takeaway containers and, you know, keeping them under the bed, that sort of stuff. You know, trying not to let mum know that I had, you know, snakes and bits and pieces. But yeah, I don't know, it kind of faded out after, you know, when I was 12 years old or whatever. You kind of go through the usual teenage stuff and
you notice girls.
Yeah. Usual teenage things, yeah. And then it got to the stage of, and I must have been about 22, 23 or something like that, and ended up catching a gecko inside my house. It was like a little Asian house gecko, and kept that for a few months and just kind of fed that and did whatever. And I didn't realize that, you know, reptile keeping was an actual thing. So after I ended up losing that gecko because he escaped out of the tank, I kind of went through the process of seeing if I could find any more geckos or anything about there, and discovered reptile licenses here in Australia, and you know, certain websites like Reptiles Down Under is kind of like a classifieds website that was available at the time and things like that. And yeah, you know, you buy a couple of geckos and then all of a sudden things start snowballing pretty quick, and you start going through that Pokemon stage of collecting them all. But that would have been about 10 odd years ago now. So I've been kind of keeping things and just kind of refining what I like and how I like to keep things ever since. But yeah, started with geckos. Geckos was like what I dove straight into. Went pretty heavy onto the knobtail geckos and things like that. A few Antaresia, you know, our little Stimsons and children's pythons and things. And yeah, pretty much went through a whole menagerie of animals until I got to where I am today.
It's fascinating.
Which is a whole menagerie of animals.
It's fascinating because you say get into geckos, and I started with geckos, and for us here, I immediately start thinking, okay, like crested geckos and upper geckos. But no, you started with like knobtails and things.
You started with cool.
Yeah.
For us, we see that as
like those are already like, oh, you've been keeping for a while, and you get into that. But that's awesome. Okay, so a couple of things quickly want to unpack there. Where in Australia are you?
I'm in Sydney.
Okay, cool. Because you mentioned like just in your backyard being able to see blue tongue skinks and things like that. What are like some other, like maybe just a couple other species that you could see around that area?
Yeah, so like quite easily you could see things like green stream frogs, blue tongue skinks, leaf-tailed geckos, lizards, velvet geckos, red belly black snakes, brown snakes if you're in the right area, golden crown snakes, bandies. Like, yeah, there's tons of species in Sydney still.
Yeah, that's awesome.
That's crazy. Yeah, we can't herp. Well, we're in Canada.
Yeah.
Our winters are too long. We don't even have that many reptiles here.
No, you got to worry about bears and stuff. That's a bit different.
Yeah, a little bit. We don't get them in the
Not
city,
much in our
thankfully.
area, yeah.
I get a couple. There's actually one that comes across the river once in a while to a park. near where I am. But
Awesome. Okay, so another thing you said there quickly, and I sort of I talked to the group about this when it came on, but maybe we could quickly touch on it as well. You said discovered licenses. So you guys need licenses to be able to keep there, right? And is there different licenses for, like, could you maybe like talk about that for a second?
Yeah, so in New South Wales in particular, because every state's different here, but in New South Wales in particular, where Sydney's located, you essentially have like a basic reptile license, which is a license you can just go and apply for online, and they just basically instantly email you a license, and that'll allow you to keep a whole heap of species. To be honest, like it really does open up probably at least 100 odd species of reptiles.
So it's not individual based. You're not getting per species a license.
Not as such. So, under that basic category, you'll have a certain amount of species that, for whatever reason, the government decides that those are the easier ones to keep, the less dangerous ones and things. And then from there, it kind of goes up in categories. So, you have your R1, R2, R3, R4, R5. And as you kind of go up the chain, you kind of slightly get into some larger, more dangerous goannas, for example, some more difficult to keep pythons. And as you kind of progress, you go up through things like elapids and such.
That's awesome. So if you were to, just as a regular keeper, if you were to go through all the stages, you are able to legally keep like elapids and things like that?
Yeah. You can go out and buy yourself a brown snake.
Oh, that's awesome. Okay.
And when you're buying,
We can't
this
hear.
is something we have a lot of restrictions here. A lot of them are municipal too. So we have our like Canadian restrictions, our provincial restrictions, and then our municipalities.
Yeah, like, and as you go through those categories here too, like there's different sort of criteria you have to hit. So, for example, I kind of stopped at my R2 just because that allowed me to have things like green pythons, Boyd forest dragons, frill necks, that sort of
Cool
stuff.
stuff.
Yeah, but like for me personally, I don't have an interest in keeping elapids just because I'm a little kid.
Yeah,
Don't know
for
how
sure.
to trust myself, sort of thing. But when you kind of go through that sort of route, you have to start doing like handling courses and things, and have somebody sign off to say that you are capable of looking after these animals and things.
Yeah.
So, as you kind of progress, it does get more difficult to get those licenses, and you have to hit more criteria.
Yeah, I think it also works that way in the States. I think they have you can do out. You get a specific amount of hours, and you have someone sign off on them, and then eventually you keep them. But then even then, they start coming in and checking your.
It's a venomous license, basically.
But I don't know if
your facility has to be set up in a very specific way. And,
yeah, that sounds pretty familiar.
Yeah. But
every state's different here. Victoria, you can't keep some like tiny little geckos, but you can get a freshwater crocodile.
The laws make I think everywhere in the world the laws make really not a lot of sense. Like
it's not the keepers making the laws.
Yeah, it's in Ottawa where we're based. It's iguanas can't be kept, which I can understand.
No snake over 6 feet.
No snake over 6 feet.
Yeah.
No lizard over 3 feet.
Right.
And it's like they're just like crazy. Just kind of broad, kind of a broad scope, whereas like iguana day, like that's a massive family. Like, and I think the people who are holding the rules into effect probably don't realize how many things
100%
are within it.
Shall we dive into reptiles? Not that we haven't already been talking about reptiles, but you keep Iguania.
Yeah, I keep 2 species of Iguania.
Okay, I was looking up kind of like what species you keep and stuff. I saw the Pressa. What is the other species you keep?
I've got a Cunningham skink as well outside. So Iguania Cunninghamii.
What are like some of the differences between them?
So for example, we'll start with the Cunningham skink that I got outside. He's probably in the realm of 35 centimeters.
Oh, wow.
So a bit over
About a foot.
Yeah. He's a crevice dwelling animal, so he likes kind of like rock stacks and things like that. So he's semi-arboreal, I think you'd call it, essentially. So he likes to kind of live on rock shelves and things. Loves to kind of wedge inside of those rock shelves and just make himself feel nice and secure. So yeah, compared to like shingleback care as such, the Cunninghams can put up with a bit more humidity. So shinglebacks are renowned for not doing well with humidity.
They're get lung infections and stuff.
Yeah, respiratory infections and all sorts for sure. So diet-wise, probably somewhat similar. You know, they kind of love their bugs and things, but they also love their veggies. So they're not shy of eating a bit of vegetable matter, a bit of fruit matter and stuff here and there. Which again is kind of different to the depressor. The depressor really don't seem to care about vegetables and such. They're pretty much just bugs and protein, essentially. But again, they're such a smaller skink. Like they're probably about 4 inches. Like a stonking one would be like 5 inches, sort of thing. Okay. So they're not a big lizard by any means.
Are they also communal?
Yeah. Yeah, they have been known to be communal. The depressor that I have in particular, like I've got 2 that are separate, and the reason that they're separate is I bought a group of 3 originally, and I had a freak accident where I had a couple of them drown. So I was left with one, and then recently I've gotten another one back. But they're very territorial, so when I go to put them together, I'm going to have to put them in a completely different enclosure, different smells, different everything, just so there's kind of like neutral ground essentially.
Right.
Because they are aggro, real aggro. I tried to put them together when I first got the second one, and yeah, the original one just wanted to tear shreds off it. So, but yeah, they are communal skinks. Definitely, Agonias tend to be communal. I know certain species like Cunninghams in particular. Whenever I do see them in the wild, generally, if you're looking in a rock crevice or thereabouts, you can probably find like at least 3 or 4 of them, sort of thing. They tend to pretty much watch each other's backs, almost. So.
Right. Oh, okay. Sorry, what was the species? Cunningham, you said?
Yeah, Cunningham.
Yeah, Cunninghams.
Sorry, I'm just looking it up because I don't think I've ever seen. I've seen the Stoixies or whatever, and then.
Yep. They all look quite similar, so they all kind of have the same sort of head shapes, essentially, all covered in little spines, really rough scales.
They look a little more like a fire skink or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I've seen. So we see. I don't know how many of these species we have available here. We see the Gidgeys every now and then, and watching the behavior, seeing the parental behavior is fascinating. So that's what I asked about communal. That's cool. Okay, and then for the shingleback, I saw your setup the other day, and I know you said in the video that he's a little bit shy. Is it just the one you have?
Yeah, it's just the one. I do love him as an animal, but I'm happy keeping some animals as just like a lone pet.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Do you think that he could at some point become handled? I think you said in the video that he's like a little shy, doesn't really come up to you. Do you think at some point they could be a handleable species?
Yeah, for sure. Like most of them are generally okay at being handled. My particular one just seems to be a little bit timid. In saying that, he's getting pretty good. Like a lot of those videos and stuff that I make, they're kind of like backlogged. So that could have been a month or so ago that I actually filmed that, and since then I've made a bit of progression with him. He's a good lizard. The reason that I probably don't play with him so much is because generally when I get him out, he gets a little bit shy and he wheezes all over me.
Yeah. You avoid that for sure.
And then you don't work with them as much. Yeah, it's like having a monitor. Like some species of monitor just want to they lose their bowels as a defense strategy, and it's like, this is not so much fun.
That's it. So, but he's a great lizard. I'm getting to the point now where he'll come out and eat in front of me, which for a long period of time he wouldn't even do that. So, baby steps. I'm not shy of taking a long time to do some of these things. Like in the past, I had a mangrove monitor, and I didn't see that eat in front of me for over a year. Until eventually we were able to break down those walls, and it eventually kind of went, you're not hurting me. I can eat this mouse in front of you or whatever. So, yeah.
For sure. That's just super interesting. And so like species like that, I don't know, like species like, let's say the shingleback, how common is it in the hobby over there? Like for example, for us here, we saw maybe one at the next one, we're never going to see it again.
I've handled a pair, and that was like, I was lucky.
Yeah. Are they more common over there? Or is it something that you like can see at reptile expos or at reptile stores, or is it also like fairly rare for you guys to see?
I'd say that they're in the less common basket, and I think that's just simply just because they don't put out a lot of babies. So
Right.
things
And they're a
like
little finicky too.
Yeah, they are. I don't think they're necessarily hard. I think you just got to understand what you need to do for them, and just keeping them nice and dry tends to be all you really need to do, and just feeding a varied diet, which for most keepers isn't that hard to kind of achieve. But it's just knowing that that's what that specific species needs. But yeah, definitely a less common thing to find at an expo or anything like that. Less common across like any sort of like reptile classified pages and such. Like it took me a little while to find this one. For a period of time, I was being pretty specific. So I really wanted a New South Wales locality one because they tend to be kind of like jet black, like the whole shingleback.
Yeah.
And funnily enough, they tend to be the ones that are a little bit more commonly sold, but they also tend to be the one that's also very commonly poached. And so quite often when you see them up for sale, it can look a little bit dodgy. Some of those ads, it looks like somebody's just gone for a trip out west, picked a couple up, and trying to make a few $100. So yeah, my little one's a South Australian locality one, and funnily enough, they're really, really common in South Australia, in particular around a lot of the towns and stuff around there. And a lot of people in South Australia keep them because they've got a very dry climate. They can, keep them outdoors. They don't have to do much work with them. So a lot of the time, people in South Australia might sell them onto reptile shops for like $50 or something down there. And then all of a sudden, everybody in New South Wales who wants them, they get shipped up to New South Wales, and then they become like a few $100s. Right. So it's,
and here you're getting your thousands.
Yeah.
I
often find like the pricing stuff so funny.
But it's so hard. Like there's no one. I don't even know if there's anyone breeding them in Canada.
I wouldn't know, but yeah, I agree.
I know
the pricing differences from places, even just between here and the States, which is like right across the border. It's a very big difference in prices, and some species that are expensive here are super cheap there, and then vice versa as well.
Well, just take Glaude for example. It cost me $2,500 or something to get a Glaude, and what are they worth over in Canada? I know in the US they're like $500 or something like that.
Yeah,
probably around the same here.
Yeah.
For us, it's tortoises because we can't import tortoises.
Yeah. Okay.
So you can get like a species that costs, will cost
$25 for 600.
Yeah, $25 in the States is $500-$600 here. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's absurd.
But if people want an animal, they'll put in the time to save for it or whatever. So
and it stops the wrong people from getting them.
Stops impulse buying.
So it's like it is what it is, and I don't begrudge it, but sometimes I'm a little disappointed. Or my bank account's a little disappointed.
Right.
I get that.
But yeah.
So I apologize. I keep jumping back between the Gurney and the Shingleback. I thought they were more similar than that. So I had like sort of all the questions like intermingled. But so one thing I wanted to ask you was about keeping outdoors, and you said you keep the Cunningham outdoors. I hope we're asking that right. Why them and not the Presa? Are you closer to their native range? Is your climate more agreeable with them, or what made you make that decision?
Yeah, so for me, I can go down the street down to like a few local herp spots and find Cunninghams pretty easily.
Okay.
So I'm right smack bang in part of their range. They do have a very big range.
Okay.
But that being said, I'm in their range. Whereas the Depressor, they come over from WA in some of the desert country out there, and like I'm on the coast essentially, so it's very different. So
more humid.
Yeah, higher humidity.
Yeah, that makes sense.
100%. So the Cunningham's outdoors. He's kept in a pretty simple enclosure. It's basically a raised garden bed that I've made like a lid for, and inside of there, he's actually got another housemate in there. He's got a blotched blue tongue that lives with him in there. Again, I'm pretty close to their range. I'm within like an hour or two of their range. But yeah, they've just got a simple setup in there where they've got a whole bunch of like a dry box, which is essentially just like an insulated box full of hay, and then it's got stacks of sandstone and stuff in there that they can crawl around on. But yeah,
that's awesome. Do you keep anything else outdoors?
Not anymore. Where I used to live, I did used to have a bunch of turtles outdoors, which was really cool. I think that's probably the best thing you can keep outdoors here. Like as well, sorry, it's best if you can keep turtles outdoors here.
Yeah.
They just tend to do better. But yeah, if space wasn't an issue, I'd keep a lot more stuff outdoors, or I'd at least try to, or at least for part of the year.
Yeah. When you're in a city, it's tough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Coop's out in the country somewhere, and he's got a little more outdoor space.
He's not even that far from me. He's only like.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
But he has the yard to be able to.
Yep.
Have all that stuff.
Yeah. It's just that space. But yeah, no, he's about an hour 20 up the road.
No. I have a question about the shingleback, because I've actually haven't really had a chance to really chat with someone who has experience with it. I've heard some comments about how they're prone to get like toe infections and stuff like that. Like, do you find that's a reality there?
I haven't personally had that issue yet.
Yeah.
I have had issues in the past with other blue tongue species or other Taliqua species with things like toe infections and things.
Okay.
Being on the ground all the time, I'm assuming that, if they're getting like a nick on their toe or something like that, and then potentially walking through some dirty bedding or, fecal matter or something, it just opens up that chance of infections. I try to be on top of it as much as I can. Whenever I see any mess or whatever, I just try to clean it up as soon as possible, just to try to limit that sort of chance.
Yeah.
I don't know. I haven't had that issue, but also I kind of think about it too. Like, if people are keeping them maybe in potentially a bit of a wetter climate, then maybe that's just fast forwarding something that could have been avoided.
Yeah. It was just something I kind of heard through a bit of a chain of people, so it was kind of
quite often.
Just kind of curious, like, and you kind of come across them sometimes with a missing toe, because when they were rearing them up as young, they'd like knock it on something and then get an abscess in their toe.
I know that quite often a lot of the Taliqua can get like shedding issues and stuff around their toes.
Yeah.
They don't seem to be able to get that off as easily as the rest of their body. So that's something, when I know the animal's coming into shed, I tend to just check it a bit more regularly, just to make sure that it's coming off by itself.
Yeah.
But haven't really come into that myself.
Yeah, just curious, because like as people who aren't in those kind of climates, we get a lot of hearsay. Like, I enjoy watching what you're doing and watching your herping stuff, and actually getting to see where something comes from.
Yeah, well, hopefully I'll be able to get you a whole bunch more stuff on shinglebacks at the end of the month.
Yeah,
because I'm traveling down to South Australia to meet up with a friend down there. We're going to go pretty hard looking for Gillen's monitors down in the southern end of their range, and he like comes across like 20 shinglebacks a day down there.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Those are the blotches down there, right?
That was it,
like the blotch patterning.
Yeah, like so same as my guy, where it's kind of like a dark brown with like that cream spotting and stuff.
Yeah,
as well. Yeah, they're pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, so maybe let's talk about that for a second. So you're going looking for parenti monitors?
Gillen's monitors.
Gillen's monitors.
I don't know what. Yeah, parenti. If you're definitely filming, if you find some parenti, that would be.
Yeah. I missed a chance at a parenti in Alice Springs. No, in Uluru. I was out at the rock, and there's a German couple there, and they're like, "Oh, there's a massive lizard on the rock around the side or whatever," and went sprinting around hoping to find it, but it must have scurried off. And the way they described it, they're doing these ones. I'm like, "Oh yes, it's going to be huge." Yeah, missed it.
Or really, it was just some little thing on the side of the rock, and that's why you didn't see it.
Probably.
Yeah, when they find like really tiny snakes here and ends up in the news, it's like 15-foot snake, and it's just a ball python this big.
We don't have very many varieties here.
No. Yeah. So that's okay. So have you ever seen what their native range is before? Or is it your first time going down to look for them?
It's my first time going to South Australia, but I've been in the Gillen's range twice before now.
That's the photo behind you, isn't it?
No, that one's
That's
I can't see
Oh,
it clearly.
That one down
Yeah.
the bottom is.
Yeah.
But yeah, the one up the top's up in Kakadu. But no, my last trip was in March of 2020. I got to see my first Gillen's monitor in the wild then, which was awesome. One of my mates, Luke, took me to a spot that he'd found. We spent an hour or two out in the hot sun with our minds just melting inside of our heads trying to find one. Yeah, it was cool. It was cool to grab some data and stuff like that and just try to bring it home and like although you're only getting that kind of like snapshot of that day in that couple of hours or whatever, it's cool to just kind of see those windows and try to make up.
Yeah, any interesting discoveries that you weren't expecting about seeing them in the wild?
The one thing that I think was pretty interesting, and one of my friends brought this up when we were on the trip, is that maybe their patterning, like the fact that they're grey and the lighter colours, is almost like an effort to try to keep cool rather than trying to actually keep hot. So where they particularly were and where Gillens are generally found is through like dead mulga and bleached trees essentially in the sun. So they're trying to blend in with the tree, but also maybe the fact that they are that grey coloration gives them a chance to be active during warmer parts of the day, but without attracting that heat into their body.
Yeah.
Say, for example, a tristis, like a black-headed monitor that would heat up quicker, what you'd think would heat up quicker being a dark colour. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. But, yeah, it was pretty cool to be able to throw the temp gun on the ground and see it at, 73 degrees Celsius and go, this is cooking. Yeah,
wow, that's insane.
70. Wow.
Yeah, that's
Celsius.
totally
That's
insane.
crazy.
Celsius. Yeah, so the air temp was not so bad. It was about 39 to 40.
Yeah.
But like inside the tree hollows and stuff where we were taking them was anywhere from like 40 to 50 degrees Celsius. It was cooking.
Yeah, and is this around the same time as when you found it, or were you seeing them more
during
later hours?
No, we just found the lizard and took the temps within 40 minutes of seeing the lizard.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was pretty
crazy.
Cool. But hopefully, depending on what my mate wants to do on this trip, hopefully this trip we should be able to maybe see a bit more morning activity, or I'd like to try to see if we can find them in the morning, try to catch them coming out almost.
Yeah.
One thing that I didn't take on that trip and that I have taken on trips since is a pair of binoculars. So in particular, when you're looking for little lizards that are shy in trees, like before you even hop out of the car sort of thing, you can throw your binoculars on and see if you can see anything in a patch of trees moving around.
Yeah.
So,
is that where you're finding them, in trees?
Yeah, these particular monitors are generally associated with dead mulga trees and things. So they love just like living in the cracks of trees. If you ever see one run on the ground, like I'm sure you haven't, but they're pretty useless on the ground, to be honest. Like they're not that agile. So
they're fast though.
They are fast.
When they're in your hand, they're at least fast.
Yeah, they're
or at least when
they
they're warm.
are quick.
Yeah,
they are quick. I've got a little girl in this tank next to me who's been running around like a madman, trying to get some weight on her. She's just dropped a big clutch of eggs for me. So
okay.
But like they're quick.
Yeah, they're not as common of a species here as some of the other small.
I've never seen
small monitors. I've
only
only seen them a few times.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and I'm kind of hoping to see a little bit more popularity and interest in breeding them here and stuff, because it's a lot of the time it's like European imports that we see here, right? And they're just like, I don't know a ton about them. I know that they.
Oh wait, actually have some at the last expo.
Yeah.
Were those the little guys that this big?
There were some baby ackies and some baby.
I have seen them.
You saw them in a little box
last weekend in a little box. Yeah. But that was the only time I ever.
I unpacked those.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, they're fast when they want to be. But.
That's cool. Okay, so you just got a clutch.
Yeah, I've got a couple of clutches in the incubator now. They're starting to kind of go through the process for us here in Australia. So she laid 4 eggs, and it doesn't sound like much, but for a lizard that tiny goanna that's like this big, and she's laying 4 eggs like this size, it takes the hell out of them. So
is that about average?
Yeah, I'd say 4 or 5 is pretty average. The biggest clutch that I've ever had is 8.
Wow.
Wow.
And that female just looked like she was gonna die afterwards. Like she
I'm sure.
just
Yeah.
given everything to it, sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it does take
Just
a fair bit.
loose
to get it back.
skin dragging on the
Yeah.
ground afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty heartbreaking to see, to be honest.
Yeah.
For sure. Do you
That's
do anything
crazy.
after that? Like after the fact? Like do you give them any specific type of food to kind of get them the strength back faster, or like what are you doing?
Yeah. I tend to kind of feed them like a real high protein diet. So I might give them some egg or some like kangaroo mince or something like that, for example. Which
That
week
sounds so
to
crazy.
week, I wouldn't usually give them that sort of stuff. Like usually it's just bugs. But when they've exerted so much, I just want to try to get a bit of fat back onto them. Quite often I'll put calcium and vitamin powders and stuff through that as well, just to try to get as much nourishment back into them. Yeah,
For sure.
and that might only go on for like a week or so. And like, for example, this girl, I don't know if I'll be able to catch her, but she was absolutely belted. So I decided that it's probably best for me to do that. So
Is that an adult female?
yeah, this is a breeding female.
Wow. Okay, they are smaller
They're small,
than
yeah.
I was expecting. Yeah, that's actually a nice size.
No,
Yeah,
they're really cool.
Yeah.
As far as a goanna goes, like they're a perfect monitor in my opinion, because you get all that big goanna attitude, but you also get them in a tiny package.
Right.
They've got a bit of a skinky torso,
Yeah.
slightly
yeah.
elongated torso on them, and no, they're really cool.
Yeah, shorter legs and things,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, usually they're a bit chunkier than what she is. She's just trying to get her weight back onto her now, but
For sure.
Yeah.
I just mean like size in general. I was expecting something a lot bigger.
And they're a good colony. You can keep them in a good colony.
Oh, you can keep them communal.
Yeah, communally.
yeah. So
That's super interesting.
I think I've got 11 of them at the moment.
All together?
No, not all together. So I've got a group of three, a group of three, and the pair. Yeah, so yeah, I've got a few of them going.
Yeah, and I guess that'll since you have a breeding female in your hand, that'll lead us a little bit into the breeding of them. Like, do you, when you're dealing with like nesting for them and stuff like that, like you're doing nest boxes, like is that just like a sand kind of thing? Like if someone here was trying to get into them.
Hint.
Yeah, I tend to do sand. Otherwise, I actually think sand and like a cocoa peat mix is a bit better, just because the cocoa peat will kind of like help it retain a bit more humidity longer, because obviously the environment that they're in is pretty dry.
Yeah.
Sucks the moisture out of the sand pretty quick. So I tend to do that. For myself, I've actually found that recently kind of like taller nest boxes, like a cereal container, tends to be
really?
my preference. So, something that's probably about 20, 30 centimeters wide, but only narrow, kind of only 4 or 5 inches wide, but then tall. That tends to be working really well for me at the moment.
So are they termite mound nesters or?
Here's the thing, right? So one of my friends, the same guy that took me on a trip to find these guys in the wild, he found a female that was laying in a hollow of a tree in termite dust, essentially. It was like the termite mound had been, it wasn't a live termite mound, but she was digging in the dust in a hollow 8 feet off the ground, and she was laying in that. And he was able to see her, and he passed through the same area a week later, and he thought, I'll go and check that tree. And it looked like it had all been packed in where she was kind of digging it out. So
wow, that's really cool. Yeah,
it's really cool, and it is something that I want to try to experiment with myself. So I kind of have a plan to almost use like PVC plumbing tubes and try to find like a nice hollow log that'll kind of suit it, and then use like a red sand and cocoa peat mix or something like that to see if they prefer going in that hollow in the tree versus. So my nest boxes are like currently like a nest box, but they've got kind of like a fake termite mound over the outside of them, just as a decorative type piece. But yeah, they're essentially just nesting in what they've got available. But I want to have that as an experiment to see if they prefer one or the other.
Yeah, what they prefer. Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, cool little lizards. They're
Yeah.
they're one of those things that, like, no matter how much I try to find information on them, there's just not that much data.
Mhm.
Like, you know, that goes for a lot of species, but you know, it's one of those things that just intrigues me, and I just want to try to see all this sort of stuff for myself.
How long have you been working with them?
About, I think 6-7 years.
Yeah, then you should be the one putting out this information.
Yeah. That's your job. That's your job, man.
Yeah.
Awesome.
If only you had a YouTube channel, you could put something on about that. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah, it's funny, hey, because like I watch back like my videos, because I've done like care videos for them in the past or whatever, and I'll be like, oh, you know, I'll change that or change this or whatever, and it has been on the cards. I need to do an updated kind of care video on them. But yeah, that's my goal too, is to see all this sort of stuff in the wild to get like the real data. You know, it's one thing to be able to do it with a captive population, but what are they actually doing in the wild? That's my interest.
Yeah, no, that's so cool. Like, because like for us, it's so all we can do is guess, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like you kind of go, oh yeah, this works, but it would be interesting to be able to see. You know, like, you know, I know I have Kimberly's. Yeah, I can do this, but it would be really cool to see how they were actually doing it.
Yeah,
that's in the wild. Yeah, that's super rad.
Are they seasonal layer? Like, are they seasonal layers, or is it kind of just a all the time thing?
In my experience, they're seasonal. I know that you can, like most monitors, make them not seasonal, and you know, if you just keep feeding them and cooking them, they'll keep laying eggs.
Right.
I don't do that personally, so I tend to go through a cool down stage in the middle of the year where I tend to stop food and stuff like that, and then I'll kind of bring them back up about this time of year. They kind of hit that reproductive mark and start pumping out eggs. So for me, I'm yet to actually double clutch a Gillen's. So I know there's plenty of people there's plenty of people that have done that. It's something I would like to try to do just to say I've done it, but at the same time, I've got to question myself and go, is that the right thing for the lizard?
Yeah.
You know, so just because you can do it, does that mean that, what's that cost to her?
Putting extra stress on
well, I guess like in nature, if there's an incredibly abundant season, they'll be able to double clutch, right?
Yep.
So
that's it.
They're kind of built to have that option once in a while.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it is something that I'm actually going to try to toy with this year to see if I can at least get one of my 4 girls to go a second.
Yeah.
I probably won't force that on girls like that one that's just laid, and you know, I don't want to cost her any more than she's already done this year.
Yeah.
So you know, I'll be kind of cautious about feeding her over the next couple of months to not kind of get her into another cycle. But some of the bigger girls that are a bit chunkier and that, then I might see if I can get another clutch out of one of them. One thing that I had done years ago, and I do want to replicate this, is I actually managed to hatch Gillens out in the cage. So I managed, I came in to my original pair and I was like, oh, it's like a little garden skink in that cage. And it was like kind of wedged between the glass and a piece of timber. And I was like, oh, that's a baby Gillen's monitor. I opened up the door and I could only see one, but 4 Gillens dropped out. And then like over the course of the next day, I had another 3 Gillens, like hatchies, running around the tank. So I just hit the nail on the head with that one, and maybe the soil was just humid enough that the eggs just went for that 100 odd days to hatch out. So that was pretty cool.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's awesome. That's actually what I was going to ask, is how long is the incubation for them? About 100 odd days.
90 to 110, I'd say, is pretty average. I try to incubate mine so they're about 29 degrees in the nest box, in the incubation tub.
Okay. Yeah.
So for me, my incubator is set to 27.5 degrees Celsius, but the actual the incubation tub sits at about 29.
Okay. Do you get have you grown them up enough to know that whether you get an even ratio of males and females?
Okay, so 84. So they're hot.
I knew you had to.
We're metric, but we're horrible metric. So certain things.
We do.
All of our reptiles are Fahrenheit because the States is so close to them.
I keep it Celsius here.
You do? I don't. So I was okay. So it's 84 Fahrenheit. That's That's hot. Yeah.
Yeah. I have grown up my fair share of them. That being said, yeah, I'd say like just comes down to luck really. I'd say it's like a 50-50 thereabouts mix. Some clutches you get more boys, some clutches you get more girls.
Yeah.
So it's,
But you don't think they're like temperature, like TDS temperature test Germans or whatever it's called?
I don't believe so.
No. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So what kind of stuff do you do to kind of? You said you don't keep cooking them and you don't keep feeding them. But is there anything else? Like, do you drop temperatures? Do you reduce light cycles to kind of get them to slow down for a couple of months?
Yeah. So, they're unfortunately you can't no longer get these things here in Australia. But I've got these power boards. They're an Arlec Grid Connect power board where you can actually like plug in your lights into this power board, and you can set certain features on what you want that power socket to do. So for me, I've got my lights set to come on and go off with the sunrise and sunset of my suburb. So then I don't have to flick anything, but every day is different. So they're naturally throughout the year getting that sunrise and sunset dip during winter and ramp up during summer.
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt you real quick. Sorry, did you say it's connected to like what's happening? Like it actually?
Yeah, so
like,
my Edbirds do that.
Really?
I can set it.
What?
I can set it to go for sunrise and sunset.
Of like what? So every day it's changing sort of for them.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay, sorry. That's I had no idea that was a possibility. That's awesome.
I just thought I have a bunch of Australian species, so our summer's not the right time because our Australian monitors still want to breed in your summer. They don't want to breed in our summer. So so I don't end up using the feature because it just doesn't work for anything. Our winters it's like dark until it starts getting light at 8 a.m. and it's dark by 3:30. You know?
Yeah. Sorry. Anyway.
Yeah. So it wouldn't work for you guys at all, but for me, not so bad. And I've got the heat lights. I do tend to control a little bit more, but I'll manually set that timer throughout the year just to, ramp up, ramp down. So, for example, they get heat from 7 a.m. till I think 3 p.m. nowadays. And the only reason that they get that kind of what most people would consider as a short window is because this room does get very hot. So, they don't need to be burning 100% of that time. Like even now in here, it would have to be at least 26 degrees sort of thing.
Yeah.
So it's and we're only 9:30 in the morning, so it's starting to warm up pretty quick. But yeah, I do kind of dip that down during winter. So during winter, they get a point where they hit 0 hours of heat a day. So they'll get that for like usually only about 2 weeks where I'll do that. And then I'll start ramping it back up and I'll start at like 4 hours a day. And then every couple of weeks, I'll just ramp it up another hour.
Oh, that's cool. And then you have a little bit more spending money at that time of year.
Yeah.
So that's
Electricity's not cheap.
Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I must say I'm not as active with that stuff as
I'm trying to do that with the mountain dragons right now. So we're going into like what's the rainy season for them.
Yeah.
So I've increased my misting cycles and I'm gonna try to keep them a little bit warmer for the next 2 months. And hopefully they lay the eggs.
Yeah.
But I'm always interested in asking because everyone has different ways of doing it, right? Like so you said you're reducing cycles. Some people I know will switch out the bulb completely for a lower wattage bulb, or I think you do something like that. Right? You increase the bulb or something like that. But it's super interesting. Cool. Yeah.
No, that's very cool. I feel like we've covered a lot of the stuff I wanted to touch on the Gillens.
Okay, cool. So I'll ask you while you're there. So you said 190 to 100 days kind of thing. Babies hatch out.
Yeah.
Are they eating the same thing? How big of a size difference are they from adults? Are they eating the same thing? That kind of thing. Right?
They're pretty tiny. Like a good size hatchling, if you've had like a smaller clutch, for example, they'll generally be max like 4 inches, including their tail. So they still come out a pretty decent size. Again, if it's a small clutch, obviously, if you have like 8 eggs or something, the babies are considerably smaller. I just generally feed them on bugs. They don't really want to be interested in anything else that's not moving. So for me, bugs, generally baby crickets and cockroaches and things like that, just dusted in calcium powder every couple of feeds. In the past, I've kind of just tub raised them. So I've used like just a 50 odd litre plastic tote,
Yeah.
and I've just put a UVB tube above that with a halogen heat light, and then that way I can just kind of chuck food in as I'm walking past, sort of thing. Make sure they're eating it all down.
Do they eat large stuff? Like we were chatting with Brandon from Canadian Cold Blood, and he was saying, breeding his Kimberleys, like
He'll throw in big crickets.
he won't go under a half-inch cricket for little babies, because they just want something, the biggest thing they can cram down their throat. They don't care about anything smaller.
Yeah, they definitely get excited for larger food items.
Yeah.
I try to find that balance though, just to make sure that they're not like choking on anything. I've never had it happen, but you can kind of see sometimes they're battling something for like 10 minutes. It's
sometimes it's our own stress.
Exactly.
I remember watching one of my Ackies just like cramming something, and he's like bashing it into a rock trying to get it down his throat. I was like, oh.
Yeah. It doesn't look like fun to us, but for them it's excitement and it's enrichment. So but
that's cool.
I do find if you give them something too small, they just don't even look at it.
Well, that's what I was wondering. They seem like they're too intelligent to be like, I'll waste my time on like, this isn't worth the meal kind of thing,
it's not worth the energy expenditure to chase down something that's not giving me that back.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that definitely makes sense. Yeah. You always I always see them as like a much smarter species than some of the others. Like the dragons will take an ant down just because they're like, ooh, an ant. Like, I mean, they'll waste the energy for it, But I feel like they would. But that's cool. And so, like, how long does it take for them to grow? Like, are they like, I don't like to say like sexual maturity is adulthood or whatever, but like, how long till you'd maybe consider starting to breed them? Is it like a couple of years thing? Or?
Yeah, for me, it's probably that 2 or 3 year mark. I'm not one of those keepers that feeds my animals every day. So, obviously with food comes growth. I tend to slow grow, or what I refer to as slow grow, a lot of my animals, where I try to avoid getting them fat, and I try to avoid them growing too quickly. So, I'd say kind of like 2 years, they're getting pretty close, but 3 years is more comfortable to start a breeding group essentially with them. So,
that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I don't know. Cool, man. You need to speed up and start breeding some monitors, man. Cool. Yeah. Do you have any more monitor questions?
No, I'm actually quite curious about sorry, I'm drinking my coffee. Sorry.
You're right.
It's not the morning here, so I'm having some coffee up to cover for you.
I told you can drink on the podcast.
The boys.
Yeah.
Boys, yeah.
So I'm curious about too.
Yeah. Okay. My first question, and this is like, I'm dead serious right now. How can we smuggle some to me? Like, how can you box them up and send them to me? Because I want them like really badly. No, they're awesome. Yeah. Hit. I'm stuck. Hit them with the void questions.
Yeah, I guess like something I'm curious about. Like here, they're super rare. I don't know how accessible they are for you guys. Like we know one guy who just seems to collect everyone that comes into the country.
Yeah, he's not giving me a chance to get
it. And he's trying to get a group going so we can really start working with them. But they're all a little too young to work with yet. But yeah, have you ever bred them?
They're fairly prolific.
Yeah, they're just like most dragons. They'll pump out eggs. My 2 I got from Cooper. So over here, they are pretty accessible. That being said, mine have bred. I would have had at least 10 clutches out of them, and I've hatched one fertile baby.
Oh wow!
So I think that just comes down to potentially a limited genetic pool, because mine are brother and sister essentially, which happens a lot in the reptile hobby.
Yeah.
So maybe if I was to outcross a different female and a male and stuff like that, I'd have better success. But I've gotten to the stage where I know she's laid like 3 or 4 clutches already this season for me. I haven't even bothered digging up the eggs. I'm just like, come out of the ground.
Yeah.
Do you think they would? That's an interesting question. Do you think they would?
Yeah. It's been done plenty of times where you've hatched boys out in the ground. I haven't personally, but being like a bioactive enclosure that's regularly misted and stuff like that, that's got that kind of humid soil, I don't see any reason why it's not possible. I've hatched quite a few animals in tanks, a lot of geckos, obviously the Gillens as well and things. So, I don't see a reason for it to not be possible with these guys.
No.
But yeah, awesome lizards. One of the most attractive dragons we have, or probably one. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'd say one of the most attractive dragons we have here in Australia
on the planet.
Yeah. I love the fact that they're like sexually dimorphic as well. Like, being able to just spot differences between the two of them instantly is awesome. I've had a lot of people say that their boids are like super aggressive and things to them. Mine aren't that at all. Like, I can open up the door and they'll like just come out and walk along the lounge room floor and scuttle up my arm and sit on my shoulder and stuff like that. Like, they're pretty friendly little guys, but I think they're in my lounge room, so they see me multiple times a day.
Yeah, they're used to you.
Yeah, my son's staring at them through the glass all day, so they're used to it. Yeah,
that's awesome.
But yeah, great little lizards, but like they are fantastic. Yeah, if you get them, you'll love them.
I'm sure I would. I don't think it's at least another 10 years before they're like accessible here. I think
it'll be a few years.
Maybe not 10.
A few years.
I think it'll be.
We can get them when you're in port once in a while, but
yeah. So are they? They like it cooler, right?
Mm.
They're not. Yep. Yeah. So where from Australia are they? Where are they native to?
So they're native to the rainforest in far tropical North Queensland, where it's actually really hot. But the rainforests themselves can stay relatively, I won't say cool, because it can still get pretty warm, but they're not like, you're not going to have to put a basking light above them or anything like that, depending on what your house temperature is. Over here in my place is pretty warm. So, if you've got snow on the ground outside, it might be a bit different. You might have to do something, but
we have heaters.
We have heaters turned on like
okay.
It's probably warmer here.
Yeah, if you've got that, you'll be fine.
All year round.
Yeah. So then are you able to keep them outside, or are you in too hot of an area for them?
Yeah, I could probably put them outside for a few months of the year. Right now would probably be okay, but if we were to get like a real hot day come through, you'd have to be conscious of that and bring them in. Generally, anything above the sort of like 28, 29 mark, they start stressing a little bit. So, you definitely wouldn't want to be cooking them outdoors. I know plenty of people that do keep them outdoors, but they tend to be in their range.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So
I
think that would be incredible.
And a lot of shade, probably.
Yeah, you'd want to make sure you had like a big outdoor enclosure with plenty of plants to kind of create that dappled light, shade cloth over it on hotter days, that sort of stuff. Misting systems and that, just to try to make sure that they're getting some good drinking water and stuff as they're going through the days. But yeah, it is funny because like they are a cool climate species, but they do come from a pretty warm area.
Okay, yeah, that's very interesting.
But yeah, they find those microclimates in that area.
For sure.
Right. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. Yeah.
Do they recognize still water?
I haven't had them recognize still water.
Okay.
The only time that I've had them recognize still water is if I've like just freshly filled up their water bowl. Okay. But I think that might be they've seen me put water into it, and
it was rippling.
Yeah, and that new water smell. So I know we generally don't smell it, but that kind of triggers them to drink every now and then.
So how do you have moving water in with them, or is it just the frequency of misting, or what do you do for that?
No, I don't have moving water personally. I might just go in with like a spray bottle and just give them like a bit of a drenching a few times a week. And I do try to freshen the water bowl up a few times a week, just so then they've seen it move. So if they do want to come down and have a drink, then they do that.
Yeah.
I know, heaps of people will say for that for frill necks as well, where they kind of have like a waterfall or something in their cage just to try to get them to drink. I haven't had to do that. Okay. My frill neck, like this whole room here, this has got a Mist King on it. The only tank that doesn't have the Mist King nozzle is the shingleback tank. But when the Mist King goes off in this guy's enclosure, the frill neck, he'll physically lick it off the wood and stuff like that. He'll go and seek that out. Right. So it's a very similar thing to the boids. You miss down the enclosure or whatever, they'll drink off a leaf, they'll drink off a log, they'll lick it off their skin, that sort of stuff. So
Sorry, what is that other species you just mentioned?
I've got a frillneck in the tank behind me. Frillneck
Oh,
lizard.
Really?
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, we could we could talk. That's another
Boy,
species.
that was delayed.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it's been a long day. It's been a long day, man. Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I did actually see him in.
Yeah.
I watched the video of you feeding the black soldier fly larva this morning. Actually,
Oh, yeah.
I did see him in that video, and actually, he's very nice. He's much darker than any of the ones that I've seen here in captivity. And I don't know if that's. I don't know if we've just been seeing the Indonesian.
I think we
residents
probably see
Australian.
more
Okay, so
Indonesians
that
than
make-
we
that
do
make- that
Australians.
might be
The
it.
Australians are a lot harder for us
Okay, but yeah, beautiful animal for sure.
because Australia doesn't give away any of its animals anymore.
See, that's the thing in itself. I reckon that, myself as a reptile keeper and breeder, I should be able to legally find a way
Yes.
to sell my reptiles to
Yes.
you guys
Yeah.
out there.
I've
Who
thought about
cares if-
this. Yeah.
The government takes their cuts, do whatever they have to do, keep them happy. But
Yeah.
why shouldn't that be possible? I can understand from our government's point of view not importing animals, just because they freak out about the little things, but you're not harming anything by sending it out.
And if the government's tracking exportation, they can limit the amount. It's like, nope, we've already had 1,000 exports this year.
Right.
Yep.
Of this species. Sorry. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care if you're going to make $40,000. It's not my problem.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Because outside of Australia, it's very hard for us, like as North Americans, we then try and get like a European line.
Mm.
So we're making sure we're not crossbreeding.
Mm.
And getting a little bit more of a family tree. A few years back, there was a lot of talk with the beardies being so inbred that they were talking about trying to start crossbreeding them with something else.
They did start.
They did start.
They started crossbreeding them with beardies from a different, a different locale or a different subspecies of beardies or something like that. I don't know. So to be honest, I've never got beardies, and until like 2 years ago, I thought there was the bearded dragon. In the last 3 months, I've discovered there's like 6 different species of bearded dragons.
Mm.
So I don't know what they've been crossbreeding them with, but I was speaking to a bearded dragon breeder at one of the expos, and he said they brought down a slightly bigger. It's a more darker. It's like almost a black bearded dragon, and that's what they've been crossbreeding them with, and it's already been done. It's been proven to work. The babies are they're already on F2 or F3 now.
Yeah.
How good of an idea this is, I'm not too sure. I'm not 100% sure.
But they were getting so
it's
inbred
good.
that there was going to
Exactly,
be,
yeah.
it was going to crash.
I think everyone should just start buying other types of dragons.
But the industry
dragons,
is so obsessed with bearded dragons,
Yeah.
selling bearded dragons. It's how people have been trained.
I just dropped a drink on myself.
But
maybe they're crossing them with Easterns or something like that now. The Easterns or the Barbata, they tend to be pretty dark in coloration.
Yeah. So it's for us. That's our catch, And if we could get it becomes like this dream of people always talk about. Oh, I wish I could work with this zoo.
I think it was the Easterns. It was the Easterns. That makes sense. That sounds familiar.
Just to be able to kind of get some new blood brought out to be able to get it back into the breeding, because it is a struggle.
Yeah, well, it just funnels it, and then it just opens up the lines for poachers and stuff like that, which don't always get things out the best ways, and you got to think about how many animals are being killed on the way out, sort of thing.
Yeah, you're better off legalizing it.
Exactly right. It's nearly a weekly thing here to see, some sort of news article, whether it be on the TV or on Facebook or something like that, about somebody trying to poach out shinglebacks.
Wow.
And they're all going to Hong Kong. Yeah, and they're all going to Hong Kong.
Yeah.
To then be funneled out to wherever they need to go. Yeah. But
Sorry, go ahead.
It's just the way it goes, They're an easy animal to go and pick up.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
They're not a hard animal to find.
Yeah. It is. You kind of wonder at what point the government's going to step up, like the Canadian government a few years back, like we had legalization of marijuana, right? For that reason of trying to kind of stomp down.
I've said this on the podcast multiple times now, so I'm sorry to the listeners, but you're gonna hear it one more time. I highly recommend you both read. It's a book called Lost Worlds, A Tale of Smuggling and Smudgery, or something like that. But it's basically about reptile smuggling and like how and it talks about real life stories and how they got certain animals from places to places.
Stolen
Oh,
world.
it's amazing. There we go.
Yeah.
Beautiful. So I don't know if you've gone through it all the way, but they talk about how they were sneaking snakes out of Australia in like Coke cans and stuff like that.
Oh, wow.
And,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, really good book. Really good book. Yeah.
I do need to open that up a little bit more, but I knew the one you were talking about as soon as you started talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I picked it up and I think like it took me like 3 or 4 days to finish. I did not do anything for 3 or 4 days but read that book. I was like, this is like, it's crazy seeing names of people. I'm not gonna drop the names here, but names of people that are still relevant in the industry, that are still around, and all these stories of what they've done like 40, 50 years ago. It's mind blowing. But
And a lot of the hobby wouldn't be where it is today without them.
without
No,
exactly,
it is a catch.
exactly.
Yep, absolutely. And it also like gives that opportunity for normalization too. Like we still battle that with this hobby.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, we took my Savannah to the beach one day, and I had an older lady come up and start to. She thought it was too hot.
You can say
She
carry
thought it
on.
was. I'm like, this is like ideal.
Probably even still not.
You know. Yeah, they could probably handle even more heat. But it's that like, you know, all the kids are fascinated. Most of the parents were apprehensive, but they get over it, you know, when they realize, oh, you know, she's just like a little puppy dog.
Oh, that's cool. It's cool that you can expose people to that too. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
You might have inspired a few more reptile keepers, or at least enthusiasts down the line.
Yeah, or people that at least aren't going to judge it harshly.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
We've only got a couple months here of good heat. The rest of it's indoors.
A couple months is generous.
Yeah.
Good enough heat to take a reptile out is probably like 2 weeks.
Jeez.
I wouldn't go that far. It's not that bad.
It's not that bad. It's not bad. I don't like the cold, so
we probably have a couple months. Yeah, he's from a warmer climate than me. I'm from here.
Yeah, so I'm not used to this. Yeah. But okay, cool. So, you mentioned earlier that you've done a bunch of herping trips.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe let's dive into that for a little bit. He's like, I have.
They were fun.
So maybe we'll start it off this way. What was the best one?
My favorite one was going to the Northern Territory on my third trip up there, just because I went with a few other reptile keepers or guys that have kept reptiles in the past, and you know, we were really roughing it. So we were there for, I think it was about a week, and we flew into Darwin, and pretty much as soon as we flew into Darwin, a cyclone was blowing through. So we pretty much had to like hightail it out of Darwin, which kind of worked out to my advantage. So we drove like down into the desert to where the Gillen's monitors were. And you know, the whole time we're sleeping on the side of the road in swags and, you know, living off whatever caffeinated beverages we can get at a service station sort of thing. Like there was no good food for days.
How
it was just
far off civilization are you? Civilization.
we were probably about I think about when we got to the furthest point, we were probably about 12 hours from a hospital.
2 or 12?
12.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So, you know,
that's how Australians gauge how far they are from a hospital.
Yeah.
Everything's poisonous there. So it's like, yeah, it would have taken me 12 hours to get to a hospital. Yeah. I live 45 minutes from a hospital.
The reason I use it as that sort of gauge, or in that particular circumstance, is I remember my friend Luke, you know, as he is barefoot with a mulga snake in his hand, and he's kind of playing around with it, and he went to hand it across to me, and he's like, "Oh, do you want to have a bit of a muck around with it?" And like, I'm not super confident with elapids and things like that, and I kind of went, "Hang on, let me just do the maths here. If we needed to go to hospital, how long have I got?" Sort of thing. So. Yeah, I decided against playing with a snake.
Yeah.
But you're a very smart man.
Yeah. So, but no, that trip in general, that was amazing. So, I think we ticked off. It was over 50 species of reptiles we got to see. So.
Wow! In one trip.
Wow.
Yeah, and stack like not as many as I would have liked, as always. It just gives me a reason to go back. But we got to see a good variety of animals on that trip. So that was amazing. One of the biggest highlights on that trip was Luke pretty much took myself and my mate Tyson up there. Tyson absolutely loves Merton's water monitors. That's like his big thing. He's got one of those guys at home, and obviously myself with the Gillen. So he wanted to really nail getting both of us to be able to see our particular favourite lizards. And then he's like, towards the end of the trip, he's like, okay, I've been here 10 times looking for the Owen Pelly python up in West Arnhem Land. He's like, I've never been able to find it. It's like, the world's rarest python.
Yeah.
And yeah, we were able to very luckily stumble across it within about 2 minutes of being in its range.
Wow,
So
that is so cool.
that was a massive highlight for us. We kind of geared up for a big night thinking, we're going to be out here for 6-7 hours in the dark hiking around and
getting eaten by bugs.
Yeah, and my mate Ricky went for a pee and basically went, "Oh, you're not going to believe it," and he just picked one out from where he was next to taking a wee. So
it's covered in urine.
Yeah, it was just the odds of it.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. So you guys did all three of you guys got to see your
Yeah.
That's a good trip. That's a good trip.
It was a massive achievement in that sort of circumstance. But man, we saw some great habitat along the way, and there was plenty of adventures along the way. Like we were chasing a Panoptes down near Barclay, and my mate Luke had chased up this tree, and he was climbing up the tree to try to pick it out, and it decided to springboard out of the tree, dove out of the tree, hit a bush, and it was like one of the only good trees in the area, and it pretty much ran around, went back up the same tree that he was still in, and went around the other side of the branch for him. So then he was able to just pluck it out of the tree.
Yeah. Oh my God, that's awesome.
How the hell did you come back? It was just like a boomerang. But
just had no other opportunity. It's like, I got to get up.
I could have ran anywhere though. It's way quicker than what we are. And
that's so funny.
Just stories like that, and having a car break down on the side of the road, and no reception, and just all those sorts of adventures. It was a really good trip. But yeah, I've done a bunch of weekend. What I'll say a weekend is where you essentially do, maybe 2 or 3 nights or something like that.
Yeah.
Drive off to different locations. One of my trips very soon after that, after I'd been back from that one, I was only back for about 2 weeks, and then I went up to the rainforests up in Dorrigo looking for leaf-tailed geckos up there, and finding some really cool species up there, and went actually looking for angle-headed dragons as well. So kind of a cousin to the Boyds, but
did you find them?
Nah, struck out. So I know they're there too. That's the worst part. But I just couldn't see the little knees on the side of the trees.
Yeah.
But,
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. But that was a really cool trip as well. And then I actually did 4 trips last year, so I got really lucky.
Especially with a little one.
Yeah.
So you've got a great wife, by the way.
I do. I have a fantastic wife.
He said that just
let's give her a shout out.
I do have a fantastic wife. She's she almost knows that I need to go to the desert to get my fix for the year.
Yeah.
Sort of thing. So to at least kind of re-energize me, and that's half the reason I do it too. Is not only to have some fun times with mates, but it also just kind of reinvigorates me to come back here and look after the animals that I have, and maybe come up with some new ideas or something like that to inject into them.
I also think, for me, I don't get to go do cool herping things so much, but even just getting to expos or wherever that are out of town, so I can go see some friends of mine in the community and recharge myself.
100%.
I'm a better parent when I come home from it.
You guys are really exciting me on the concept of having kids right now.
Yeah.
Very, very.
Oh, my daughter's gonna watch this. Sorry. Kids are great, honey. Yeah. But
they are great until they go to daycare.
Yeah. Well, mine are 10 and 12. So they're past the daycare now. Daycare brings home every virus that's known to man.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's disgusting. It's not fun. But been on plenty of good trips, and hopefully a few more in the future. As I said, this South Australian one's got me really excited, and
Yeah,
I do have a great wife. She booked the tickets for me. She's being a travel agent, so she's like, all right, I'm getting the next holiday, and I'm like, you tell us where you're going, where we're going. You know, like I'll fall in line. You know.
Yeah.
I'm getting my yearly desert fix.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Do you have a species, like, have you already written a species goal list of things that you want to, like, absolutely have to see, or is it all going to be, like, Gil and I focus?
Look, as much as I'd love it to be Gil and I focused, I don't want it to be 100% that. You know, there's some other things that I'd love to see down there. I'd love to see the South Australian shinglebacks, just because my guys are South Australian, so that'd be good to kind of see him in his own habitat, essentially. Yeah. My mate's constantly sending me awesome videos of bearded dragons down there, and like the dragons down there absolutely smoke any other bearded dragon in the country. I reckon they're like orange as orange can be. Just some of the most stunning individuals. Like for wild dragons, they look like morph dragons, essentially, like the colors and stuff that they get on them. So I'd love to see those. Thorny devils. I've struck out on thorny devils a few times now.
Oh, I forgot. So yeah,
they're like really top tier up there for me to hopefully see. So should be in their range a fair whack of the trip. So hopefully I'll get a live one. I've seen like 6 or 7 dead ones now. So to be able to actually see a live one would be great.
But you got to be more careful when you're driving. That's
yeah.
Our biggest, a thorny devil.
Our biggest problem here for that is probably the road trains, because the road trains can't just stop on a whim. You know, you got like 3 or 4 carriages behind them and hundreds of tons. It's
the trucks.
So those are some big ones for me. I don't know my chances, but I'd love to see Strophaurus elderoi, so the little jeweled gecko. I love my Strophaurus as well, so I'd love to be able to tick them off. I think we're going to have some suitable habitat. It's just whether it's the right location for them 100%.
Right time of day and everything else.
The Delaney knobtail gecko.
Delaney,
So going to go looking for those. A very well-known area down there that seems to turn them up. Sand monitors are going to be everywhere, as they always are. They're like a weed.
What species are sand monitors?
I think it's just the Goulds, not the Flavorous. We're probably not going to be quite up to their center range.
Now, if you see one, I don't remember. I knew the answer to this, but I don't remember right now. If you do see one of these species and you're like, oh, what an incredible specimen! I need to have this. What is the problem? Like, you can't just pick it up and take it home, can you?
No, not at all.
No, you can't. Okay,
No, definitely not.
It has to be captive bred animal or whatever.
Yeah, technically in Australia, you're not even allowed to touch them, the wild animals.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a backwards country in that sense, though, because like I'll pick up a lizard to move it off a road so it doesn't get cleaned up, but you know, technically I've broken the law by doing that.
Yeah.
But if you hit the lizard in the car, no law's broken.
No law's broken.
Right. Yeah.
You know, so go figure.
Safety of the humans is always taken into priority.
Yeah.
But sometimes it may not be like necessarily like, that makes sense. Don't stop your car if you're about to hit a lizard, but also if you get a chance to stop it and pull it out, you shouldn't be considered breaking the law, kind of thing, right? But
exactly.
I'm no lawmaker. That's
no, but so you can get wild catch permits, but I think you've got to go through a whole bunch of licensing and stuff to do that, and it's only certain states that will allow that to happen, and for certain species. So I think in WA you can do that, and I think you can apply for permits to catch things in the Northern Territory as well, but it's not like an easy thing that's just given to anybody. Sort of thing. Generally, it goes to like snake catchers and things like that. So
you probably have to prove that there's a need.
A
need for it. Bloodlines or
whatever. There's a period of time where I was kind of trying to dive right down into that and talking to a few friends about it and stuff like that, when I was thinking, you know, it'd be great to get some wild Gillen's blood and stuff into the hobby and you know, that sort of thing. But it's just not easy. It's not easy to do, and then you got to pay ridiculous money to get to wherever you're going to go find them. It's just when you got a captive population, it's sometimes you just leave the wild stuff where it is.
Yeah,
It's just easier.
yeah. It's interesting that like native habitat can or native species you can also have like potential inbreeding issues going on when you're dealing with native species, just like we do here, due to the fact that you can't get your hands on them easily, like from the wild.
No, that's it. And there's always people that do get them,
Right.
but at the same time, that's not an avenue that I want to go down necessarily, is supporting people that are doing it the wrong way. So
on that, to kind of jump back to an hour ago, how do they enforce? Like, how do they know?
Know what?
What?
Like as far as the licenses go?
Yeah, like you have a bunch of Gillenite.
Yep.
They're all captive bred, but if you I'm not promoting this in any way. It's just a question. If you went out and grabbed a handful of them, how do they differentiate them from yours?
And then you put them in a box and ship them to Canada. Sorry.
Look, to be honest, obviously we're talking all hypotheticals. There is no way that they know.
Oh, okay. I wasn't sure if there was certain track
I
points.
think it's a trust of if you'd rather have it than get caught without it kind of thing, right? Does that make sense? Like you'd rather go ahead and go through the trouble of getting a permit than them just pulling up on you one day and going, oh, you have all these.
Yeah, but I don't mean the permit, because if you have the permit.
You mean getting wild caught animals?
Yeah.
Oh, there's no way.
If there's no way they can track it.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely not.
I was just kind of curious how the government was kind of enforcing that kind of.
Yeah, it's
You get
bit of a gray zone. It's a gray zone. You're supposed to be a good person.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's if you've technically got things on the books that you've already got, that you could. There's always the potential you could fudge numbers and stuff like that, but it's, I know me and myself and my conscience and stuff like that. I feel horrible.
No, and it's not worth it. But
no.
Yeah, the risk of getting caught for sure.
Yeah.
But it's not only that too, because it's also the fact that you're pulling an animal out of the bush where it belongs. Number one.
Yeah.
Number two, you're going to be stressing that animal to high heavens because it's never seen a box.
For sure.
Parasite loads and stuff like that are going to come in on a wild lizard to be detrimental. Like the last thing I want to do is bring a wild lizard into this room and all of a sudden I've got worms coming out of everyone, sort of thing. The whole thing, I'd like to do it through the right process if I had the opportunity to do it through the right process, and I'd like to have them essentially off-site somewhere where I can quarantine them for a period of time and make sure that they're okay. But yeah, it's like so to take Varanus quarterlineatus, you can still get those guys from WA on wild take permits. They're hard to come by, but it's possible, and they really struggle in captivity. Coming into captivity after being in the wild, and generally they drop off pretty quick. So, they're one that you don't see getting around in the hobby that much, and generally it's because it's coming through those wild caught lines rather than an actual captive population as such. So, yeah, it's pros and cons, right? It's all good in theory to think I'm bringing in new blood, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. But sometimes the headache to do it, and thousands of dollars later and all the rest of it. Bring in the wild caught, set up your population, and then hopefully you can squash having to wild catch any further of that species.
Yeah.
But eventually you get into that funnel too with genetics, and you kind of hit a roadblock, and you go, it would be good to have another half a dozen of these or whatever just to outcross with. But
just another 5 would be good.
Yeah.
I just need one more.
Just one more time. Yeah.
So as somebody that can go out and see bearded dragons, and I assume they're probably fairly common over there too, and you keep one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do they still excite you like they do to keepers all over the world?
Yeah, 100%. I love seeing beardies. I think too, because beardies aren't exactly around the corner for me. They're a good drive inland to go see them because I'm east of the Great Dividing Range. Pretty much as soon as you go west of the Great Dividing Range, you can start coming into their habitat. But yeah, it's probably about 6 hours or so for me to get into central bearded dragon habitat. But yeah, no, I get excited seeing him.
Yeah.
I get excited seeing him. It's cool watching him in the wild, and like anything, it's cool seeing them in the wild and then trying to bring that information home to better your own keeping. And like, I'm pretty lucky in that circumstance where I can do that. You know, I can go out there and I can see that bearded dragon sitting 12 foot up in a tree.
Yeah.
And
that's the argument I have. I have
crazy.
That with everybody because I've seen like you and Coop and stuff, but I see these things.
It's like everybody sees them up in trees and stuff. Like that's not something anybody here ever thinks of or considers.
No, like, you know, we give him a 2 foot tall box or something like that, and it's like, well, that's a nothing for him. So, you know, that was one thing that I've changed around with my bearded dragon. You know, obviously you can never recreate the wild all the time, but my dragon's now in a 4 foot tall box, so at least he's got a bit of a higher vantage point that he can kind of sit on and, you know, mimic what he'd be doing in the wild, sitting on a fence post or up a tree or something, just that little bit more. Yeah, it's
It's
cool.
crazy. It's like they're just around houses and stuff. Like, it's mind blowing.
Well, and it's what we think about. Like so many of the arid species, we just kind of go, oh, they don't climb.
Yeah, well, I think
they sit in the sand all the time and they don't climb.
We assume too many things. I think the same could be said about like humidity levels with them.
Yeah.
Like, I think a lot of people don't spray them, don't give them water, don't like, and they're just like, oh, they're desert species because they.
I was actually,
and it's.
I was at a store a couple days ago. A guy came in, and I can't remember how the topic came up, but he started talking about someone had told him that he didn't need to give his beardy water dish.
Yeah, I hear this all
that
the time.
they get all their water from the worms they eat.
Yeah, I hear this all the time.
So I have to give them this kind of worm like twice a week, and I'm like, I'd probably give them a water bowl
or spray them down,
or something. You know,
same
just
thing gets said about leopard geckos.
Try and like everything needs water to some degree.
Do you give your? I guess since we're on topic, do you give your arid species water bowls?
Everyone's got a water bowl.
Yeah.
And everyone gets So I got the Miss King on them 3 times a week for 1 minute.
Yeah.
So it's not.
No, go ahead. Sorry.
It's not a lot of water, but it's enough to bump that relative humidity up. And, you know, what people don't realize too is a lot of reptiles, not all reptiles, but a lot of reptiles breathe in water and get humidity, like get moisture content in them that way. I know I think it's chameleons get that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know if that goes for all these guys, but in saying that, why not? It just bumps up that relative humidity for them a little bit so they're not drying out so much.
Yeah.
I know I went through a big issue recently, and it did cost me a couple of animals, but I was using a lot of those deep heat projectors.
Yep.
I don't know if you guys have seen this particular podcast, but it rang true with me. But I was listening to Reptiles and Research with the Beardy Vet.
Yeah.
It did like a 3+ hour podcast on there.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that those deep heat projectors activate the water in the reptiles' bodies differently to what like a halogen heat light does. So basically those deep heat projectors can dry out your animals quicker.
Oh.
And I've actually heard that from multiple sources now. And I was talking to a few patrons about it as well over on my YouTube channel and stuff. And I've now heard 2 or 3 accounts from them to say the same sort of thing, where they've essentially dried out animals and made them anemic and stuff like that and not been able to bounce back. So I actually think that was the reason that I lost my original pair of Gillen, is they just got too dry and didn't have that space to bounce back, essentially. And since ripping out all of those deep heat projectors and just kind of upping the misting and stuff here and changing a few things up, there was a few animals that were starting to get a bit sort of skinny, a few Gillens and stuff that were starting to get a bit skinny, and they're bouncing back. It's kind of crazy.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
And I'm talking like they started bouncing back within like 2 weeks of it. I just thought that was interesting. You know,
it is. People forget how important water is to animals, whether and in this perspective, like how important losing water is to them as well.
Well, and these new things come out that we don't know a ton about. We kind of like we we're prone to believe the hype.
Yeah.
You know,
Yep.
so it's like, oh, this does this. This heats them right through this, and you don't necessarily step back and think, okay, well, if it's doing that, then it is going to increase evaporation throughout their body. You know, that makes sense in retrospect.
Yeah. And I was the exact same. You know, I went out and bought a whole room full of these heat projectors thinking they were the best thing on the market. But, you know, lo and behold, it's, you know, after a year and a half of running them and starting to run into some issues, you know, it takes a bit of time for some things to develop.
I have a few of those at home. I will pay more attention.
Yeah, just like I'm sure with certain species, and if you're getting adequate water and stuff to them, it's not so bad. But I think for me, doing arid species that are already in a dry environment and then adding something that's cooking them even further, maybe that just didn't work out so much. But yeah, I've now taken them off everything after that, and I'm already seeing the results of them bouncing back. So
yeah. Oh, that's interesting because Lucy had one on her.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
And okay, that
who was Lucy?
Lucy
That's
is
very interesting,
a white
actually.
throat mine that just passed away.
Okay.
And the whole thing was kind of crazy. It was really
Saturday, perfectly fine. Monday, deathbed, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
And I put her in some water, and as she was starting to twitch and stuff. So it was like, okay, is there pressure on her spine from blockage? Is there? Well, I put her in the water. She had like massive bowel movements, and but then never recovered from it.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking.
Yeah, it's one of those things too. You know, like we have to live and learn and try to figure out. You know, has it been something that we've done? Is it something that's just wrong with that particular animal? You know, all these sorts of things. Like it can be so many different possibilities, but it's about us trying to limit the chances for things to go wrong.
Yeah,
almost in a sense. And yeah, we've got to experiment as we go. But I suppose like any newer sort of technology, maybe we just need to sit on it a bit more cautiously. And
yeah, and that was and they like a high heat. They like a high bask. So she just sat there on that rock a lot and would cook herself probably.
See, that's what happened with my original Gillens too, is because they pretty much loved this one crack in this log, which was just straight underneath that heat projector. And you know, they'd come out and they'd eat and they'd do everything, but I'm like, man, you're not keeping the weight on you. It's just not happening. I went through and I wormed my whole collection like 3 times, just thinking like maybe there's something there. I hadn't seen any signs, but maybe there's something there. So I was just trying to rule that out, and it still didn't fix anything. So yeah, and then I came across that Beardy Vet podcast, and I think it's like the 1 hour 55 mark. He starts talking about deep heat projectors and how they run on an unnatural wavelength to the sun.
I will check that out. I will check that out
for sure,
because that's really interesting. Because you know, with this whole situation, I've really like I've been beating myself up pretty badly trying to figure out what it is, because I adored her, and just try and figure out what you've done wrong, or if it was you or if it wasn't, you know. And that's very, very interesting, because I don't have that. I don't have them on many things. I do have 2 bulbs, and one of them was like a really high wattage on her.
Yeah, I've got a full crate of them now. I'll keep them just as like a backup when the heat light blows or something like that until I get give me a day or two type thing. But
they're too expensive to throw out.
yeah, I spent hundreds of dollars on them.
Oh yeah,
you know, I had them above green tree pythons and everything, and you know, green tree pythons being that bit more sensitive again. I hadn't seen anything on them, but I'm just like, I'm not risking that. You know.
Yeah, because you were breeding them at one point, were you?
Yeah.
Green tree pythons?
Green tree pythons, yeah.
Are you still keeping any?
Yeah, I've still got 6.
That's awesome. Okay.
Yeah, so I was actually hoping to get a clutch out of my pair this year, and I held 4 of their babies back 2 years ago. But I don't know. I scratch my head looking at her. Every day I look at her, I'm like, you look fat, you look gravid, what's happening.
Oh man, I've been living hell because of this. I feel you. This is exactly.
Yeah.
All my animals are in that position right now. It's
Yeah.
driving me crazy.
Yeah, you have a bunch of them this year that are. They look like
They all look like they're about-
15 marbles.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt.
We'll see. But
Yeah.
I know the feeling. My friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's drives me mental. But
for sure.
you know, if not this year, I'll give her a crack again next year.
For sure.
But,
Do you
yeah.
keep any other snakes?
At the moment, I don't keep much. I've got a pair of rough scale pythons, a pair of children's pythons, and a Stimson's python as well. In the past, I've kept an olive and jungles and diamonds and all sorts of carpets, womas, that sort of stuff. I've had a blackhead here or there at one point. You know,
That's
like
awesome.
yeah, I've done my round with pythons. Probably one of the coolest snakes I ever kept was brown tree snakes. That was
Wow.
awesome.
Yeah.
Just dealing with some rear fang venomous stuff,
Yeah.
little colubrids. They were pretty funky.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't know. I'm kind of moving away from the pythons a lot. I love the greens though, just because they excite me. They legitimately excite me. I think, especially with the way that I keep them too in sort of more naturalistic setups and stuff, rather than the old puppy pads and water bottles and stuff like that. You know, it's just, you know, I've seen like my baby greens every now and then. Like I've got this one in particular. He like goes and sits underneath the leaf litter and like hunts like an adder. You'll like caudal lure from underneath the leaf litter.
Oh wow!
Like waiting for something to go past, and
Yeah.
you know, any other forum they'd be screaming at you going, "You're something wrong with your snake," but that's just what he does. He goes to the ground every now and hunts from there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
Then do you pretend to walk a little mouse by?
Oh, I just quickly go and defrost one for him.
Yeah.
I'll just be like, "Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you're in your special hunting spot. All right."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what this means.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
They're
awesome.
just cool snakes.
Yeah. So okay. So this may be a stupid question, but you guys can only keep. Okay, I know the answer to this, but I'm going to ask it again, just so the rest of my question makes sense. You guys can only keep species from Australia, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then I assume all the green tree pythons you have are from one locale. Like you guys aren't able to get like all the Indonesian stuff or anything like that, right?
Incorrect. So, like most things, things have made their way here one way, shape, or another.
Okay, cool.
So it's the same as, you know, you guys over in North America pop out a cool looking beardy, and then all of a sudden next year it's here too.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, things make their ways around. So my particular green tree pythons, I know one of them's definitely, like my adults, definitely Aussie. The other one's kind of, it's definitely viridis, like it's only throwing yellow babies, but at the same time it's it doesn't look like 100% Aussie.
Okay.
But there are people here that have, you know, red babies coming out and stuff like that from the northern populations of PNG and that. So, you know, that's been happening for 20, 30 years, sort of thing. So
my
well
question wasn't that
established.
stupid.
No,
Yeah.
not at all.
Okay.
It's the same as anything, you know, in particular like morphs and stuff like that. You know, as soon as another country's got a morph, it'll turn up here eventually, you know.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Somehow.
That's super interesting. Yeah.
Some bottle floating through the ocean.
Yeah. I'm telling you, bro.
it's like a zero-bearded dragon.
Yeah.
They were doing them in like Pepsi cans and in newspapers and stuff like that, and false bottom boxes. So
that's like the drug scene.
Yeah. That book is fascinating. Anyway, on that note, did you have any more questions for?
One really big topic, actually, rabbits. No, I'm joking.
What?
I think
yeah.
that's like
should we wrap
what
it
a
up
great
there?
chat. No,
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah,
Okay,
sweet.
well, in that case, Luke, thank you very, very much for coming on. This was super fascinating episode. Can you let everyone know where they can keep up with you, where they can find you?
Yeah, for sure. So pretty much on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook or wherever, if you just look up BeachesScalyBeasts, you'll be able to find me there.
Awesome. And yeah, as always, links will all be in the description, in the show notes. Yeah, man, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks a lot
for coming on. We could probably talk about Australia all day, and maybe hopefully one day we'll make it down there. But you got the differences in the hobby super fascinating, and just I guess the the stuff that you guys are able to keep that we're not, and then the other way around. It's all super interesting. But yeah, give BeachesScalyBeasts a follow. Go check them out on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Like I said, everything will be in the description. Thank you very much, Mr. Greg, for hosting this episode with me. I appreciate it,
you.
as always. And yeah, thank you, everyone. We'll see you on the next episode.